Won't move your car? I hope you like rotting meat in your vents. This is my first Reddit post, so here I go. Also, this is mostly told by my mom. TLDR at the bottom. Let me set the scene. The year is 2017 and my family and I live in a quiet suburban street. It's mostly retired couples and some families with very young kids. Normal. Now earlier this year the house diagonal from us decided to move and sold it. About the day after everything's packed away, 5 cars come peeling down the street, and pull into the driveway and out in the road. They're a bunch of college-age kids, so we give them some slack and let them go for a day or two. Meanwhile, day in and day out different cars keep peeling down the street. Some are over 30 miles over the speed limit. This does not go over well with the neighbors, for most of the younger kids walk and ride their bikes down our street. Everyone's concerned they might hurt someone or someone's dog, before something serious can happen. Some of the neighbors who've lived here 20+ years go over and meet the newbies. This includes my mom. They're polite at first. They agreed to not go over 35, but more cars keep racing down the road. Along with that, they seem to be having parties every other Tuesday with about 30 cars up the street. Now the niceties are over, and the cops are called. Usually, they wouldn't do this, but about 5 calls came in from a bunch of houses and the police department was fed up. Having nothing better to do, they send one of the deputies and they wait around the corner for a few hours a day. About 2 fines are given, and then they slow down. Except they get smart. There's only one place the deputy can hide, so they send 1 car to see if they're there. If not, they speed again. The deputy gives up after about 3 days and is gone. A few months pass, and we were at a loss of what to do. Summer is almost here, so my brother and I are outside more. We have a basketball hoop at the edge of the road, right across from the house. Our driveway is at almost a 45 degrees angle, and all my brother's buddies come and play, so we leave it there. There's a problem. The cars keep parking to block the hoop. My brother's pissed since that's all he used to do in the summer. He goes over to the house and guys just shut the door on him. Now my mom's pissed. She marches over there and asks them to move their cars, sweetly, and when they refuse she hatches a plan. This summer was a hot one, and my mom decides to cook some homemade pea soup. Now she burns this batch. By accident, of course. Now instead of chucking it out, she puts it in this big plastic jar, seals the lid, and places it out on the back porch in the middle of the sun. Weeks pass, and she occasionally opens it. There are maggots squirming around and it turned a deep brown-green. There's also this clear yellow liquid that separated itself to the top. Disgusting. Meanwhile, my brother is determined to play basketball when there's a little opening. About 20 minutes in, the ball bounces onto one of the cars by accident. There was no mark, but the car alarm goes off, so he's trying to leave. I run out to see one of the regulars who lived there. A woman, yelling obscenities at my brother and how he needs to pay for her car. My mother runs out after me and starts yelling at the lady to get away from my brother. There was no damage, and it was clear, but the lady kept screaming. My brother and I run inside and watch as the woman follows my mom up the driveway, waving her arms and still yelling. My mom yells for her to get off her property or she'll call the cops. By now our older neighbors are watching, some walking over, and the lady realizes that she better leave it or she might actually get in trouble. She runs across the street and slams the door. Around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday with one of their parties. My mom puts on a gas mask. My dad worked in pest control, so he had one, and takes out the soup. The stench was terrible. It was rotting meat and something indescribable. She takes the jar and goes over to the cars as quiet as possible. Onto almost every car she dumps the rotting pea soup onto the windshield and into that space where there are the windshield wipers. Before anything, I have to explain these were nice cars, not sports, but Priuses and new cars, which doesn't fit with their age. The next morning my mom's out sitting in the garage, smoking a cigarette like always. It's around 6 a.m. and the lady that yelled at my brother comes out first. She's obviously tired and gets into her car. A minute or 2 passes as this woman has the most disgusted face. She turns on the windshield wipers and a hunk of rotting ham is sent flying. My mom's now in tears. And I mean tears. I wake up and head downstairs to the garage to see the woman yelling and about 20-ish kids heading out to their cars. Each one's trashed. The cops are called, but since no evidence, they can't press charges against my mom. One by one they leave in their ruined cars. They moved out 3 weeks later. TLDR, new neighbors are assholes, so my mom dumps rotten pea soup onto their cars and get them to move. Thanks for reading, and sorry for any grammar errors. Edit, Oma. Thank you for the silver and gold. CEO offered and then retracted a job offer, ended up costing him several $1 million in deals. Several months ago I found myself looking for a job. I brushed up my resume and began sending out like crazy, to companies as well as recruiters. By the end of the first week I had already scored my first interview with Financial Startup. The first interview with Financial Startup went well, and I got a call back asking to schedule a meeting with the CEO for the end of the week. At the end of the second interview the CEO made me an offer. Being entirely honest with him, I told him that while I was really interested in the position, the offer was less than I was expecting, as I had been told by headhunters that I could be making more. And B, I had been to and had scheduled several other interviews and would like to at least play all my cards out before deciding. I was entirely upfront with him, didn't string him along, and it's important that you remember this fact. At about 8:30 that night, the CEO called me and said they really wanted me, and that if I signed with them, I'd receive a raise as soon as they finished a funding round, nearly doubling my old salary. I agreed to this offer and asked him to send me the contract. The contract was sent over on Monday, at which point the CEO told me he'd be flying overseas for some meetings and would be unavailable. We'd discuss any questions I had and sign when he got back. I had 1 or 2 questions about the contract, but nothing serious, and as soon as he got back to the country, he sent me the latest version of the contract and I signed it. The next day I went to an office store to get it scanned and emailed to him, as my scanner had died not long before. Not 30 minutes later, I got a call from the CEO. He told me that even though I had already sent him in the signed contract, he was choosing not to sign it, and he didn't want to hire me. He had a bad feeling about me. He thought I wasn't being serious about the position, and that was that. I'm not ashamed to say that I almost begged him to reconsider. I spent 15 minutes or so trying to convince him that he was wrong, and that I was most definitely interested in the position, but he ended up sticking to his decision. What really pissed me off was that he and I were already discussing contracts, so I had stopped looking elsewhere, as I was sure I had something lined up. I spent the next 3 to 4 days just bummed out on the couch. I was seriously depressed. Eventually I got back into the groove, and ended up signing at my current position, which was not only an improvement over my old place and Financial Startup. The salary blew them both out of the water. Just being able to bounce back and find something decent after the way he treated me could be considered feel-good revenge. But things inadvertently got so much better. The company I work for now is a cross-industry provider. Basically, if you use computers or servers at your company, you can use our product. Because of this, we have contacts at most of Fortune 500 companies. 2 weeks ago, I bought my sales and the customer success team's lunch, something I do every other week, because I want to keep my boys happy. I told them my story and said that I'd love to stick it to the CEO somehow, but I didn't really have any way to. They saw me as a big step up from the previous manager, who was a D. So when they asked me for Financial Startup's name, I gave it to them. What I just found out at lunch today blew me out of the water. They approached every single financial customer we had and mentioned that we'd had a bad experience with Financial Startup and were extremely unsatisfied with their behavior. Since we've had some of these customers for years, the relations were strong, and they took the sales, customer success guys at their word. In the past 2 weeks, Financial Startup lost 3 major multi-year deals with large Fortune 500 companies, each in the 7-figure range. Next time, I'm taking them out to dinner instead of lunch, and dinner is going to include an open bar tab. I may not have planned this revenge, but they carried it out for me, and I owe them. TLDR, applied for a position. CEO decided not to sign the contract he offered me. Told my teams at my new job. They screwed up several multi-million-dollar deals for CEO so far. Also, I know this sounds very conveniently that happened. I have proof if the mods ask for it. Bully loses his friends and has to change school. Deleted. Customer is not always right in my field. I'm on mobile and this is only my second Reddit post. Forgive me for the errors. So I'm an ASE certified mechanic. I've been wrenching for 22 years. This story happened way back when I was still an oil change tech and learning my way. This customer comes in one day and wants us to look at his brakes and put some pads on the car that he brought. The shop manager had me bring the car in to look at. I pull the car in the shop and it is grinding real bad when I hit the brakes. I know it's more than a pad job, so the car goes up. The tires come off and sure enough, he let his brakes go for so long there is no more brake surface on the rotors. He had wore them down to the cooling fins in the middle of the rotor. I of course tell my manager. Well, he told the customer, a crotchety old man, the situation and explains he needs new rotors. We even took him out and showed him there is really no rotor left at all. Naturally, guy gets super pissed. Says we are just trying to get more money out of him. We better just do what he wants or he is going somewhere else. Blah, blah, blah. My manager takes it all in as cool as a cucumber. When dude was finished, my manager did the neatest thing I had ever seen at the time. He very calmly explained that the vehicle needed to be repaired correctly or he would red flag the car as it was unsafe to drive. Old boy looked like he was going to explode. Threatened to call the cops if we didn't return his vehicle. We were just crooks whole 9 yards. My boss said it's cool, I'll call them for you. Called in the state highway patrol. Showed them the car in front of the customer. They looked at him and said this car is unsafe for the road. He either fixes it correctly or has to tow it out of our shop if he wants to go somewhere else cause they will not let it on the road. Sad thing is he ended up paying to have it towed out a few days later. Which I'm sure cost more than the $40 for new rotors. IDK if he got it fixed right or not. Most wrenches out there just want your car to be safe. We run on the same roads. I didn't know at the time, but I do now, that we do have authority to lock your car down, if it is completely unsafe for the road, until it is fixed correctly or towed somewhere else to get fixed correctly. I love what I do cause I make the roads safer. I also work in a field where, no, the customer is not always right. Old man learned the hard way. A few others in my career have as well.